Okay, I'll dive straight in due to time. I'm only actually going to show one site, but I think it's the best one of the three I looked at. So, finding order in chaos. To give you a bit of context, well, we're now moving to the Netherlands. So, for those who don't know, it's the Netherlands, or more or less, this is a paleo reconstruction of the Netherlands in the time of the Late Neolithic. So, specifically for the corded ware culture, or more locally known as the single grid culture. We have, as I think was said before, we have this bias in geology. We have to the east, we have these Pleistocene soils, these cover sands, and these contain predominantly the burial places. And we have the wetlands, which are more these greens and the peat areas more to the west, and that's where we have settlements. So we have this kind of a bias between the two. Obviously, we have trouble finding settlements on the sands due to erosion and things like that as well. So, is this a real bias or not? We still have to look into that in more detail. And I'm just going to take you to this area up here where there's a nice cluster of settlements, just about there. So, there's about 20 or so settlement locations. They were found due to having, again, we've said this before, cultural layers. So some nice dark humic organic material, which when you're excavating it, it looks something like that. So you come down to this nice black material. So these have been easily identified through borehole campaigns in the 1980s, mainly, and also some test pits, things like that, with only a few excavated in full, some even excavated partially. And again, we have some nice stratigraphy or microstratigraphy, which would be ideal for soil micromorphology, which I can never say it. Which some was done in the 90s by Richard Exaltus, but it was really at an early stage in the development of that. Okay. Going to next. Oh yeah, and of course, these places are, well, being the Netherlands, being low-lying, you dig a hole, you will get wet. So, but not great for my boots, but great for preservation of organic materials. Okay, so I'm going to take you straight to one of these sites, and this is the site of Minacker. It's a 30 metre by 30 metre excavation, so that's generally covering the area of the site, and it was excavated in half-metre squares. We've published this recently because it was excavated in 1991, I believe, and it was stayed in the archives and was then published. So as a team, we came together. I'll explain about that in a bit more detail, and we brought all the data together and published it. And this was, I'm strangely showing you the results first, but this hopefully will make more sense later. It ended up, in terms of a site biography, as being a multi-role site, if you want to call it that. Started off with this MK1, this structure here. This is a house structure. So this was the first building on the site. If it was cleared or not, that's also something to look into. And
excuse me, what's MK1?
That's just a code name, Minacker 1.
Okay.
Or Minacker 2. So MK2, is the structure. There's a code for it. Maybe I should choose a different one. And it's surrounded by two creeks that would have been opened during habitation, and they filled up during time. And eventually, at some point, the house went out of use, and it looks like it just decayed in place and reverted to being a mounded area. So again, we had build-up of cultural layer over a long time of use, and it ended up being a local relief of the area. Interestingly, later, as the last phase of activity on the site came after it was abandoned, people came back and they built this 22-metre long trapezoidal structure. You'll notice it's got at the wider end up here, there's two posts marking an entrance, and we have a grave located centrally in this wider end. Now, this is, for those of you who know the Neolithic, this is a typical structure which we'd say would be a long barrow, of which there's many examples in Poland and Denmark of this kind of structure. Strangely, this is in the late Neolithic where we don't get long barrows. Yeah, we've got long barrows. So, and there's another nice parallel which I haven't actually got here, which also could be a long barrow as well. So, and I'm talking a bit too long. So, yes, it's very nice because the grave is actually dug into the previous context of the settlement, so you get this nice idea of people coming back, identifying with an area of former habitation where people formerly lived, and they're putting someone from their community into this context, into the place of the ancestors, and making those, linking up with theory of the place of the ancestors, place of the living, and it's a merge from the place of the living into a place of the dead. So it's a transition, if you like, between one and the other. There's no clear split. It's a process which just happens in a dynamic way, and it's very gradual. Okay, to speed up a little bit. Okay, so that's the site kind of explained, but maybe you want to know a bit more. What about all the finds that we found? So we have, here's a distribution map, which are love them or hate them, that's what they are. And this is the animal remains. Now, there's an awful lot of problems with distributions. They're often unreliable, and they're very subjective because we're choosing what colour ramp to put on them, we're choosing what, in what way they're being displayed. We may see some kind of darker area here, but if, for instance, we had an extra kilo of material in the ditch, then that would be it'd affect the colour ramp a lot. And of course, being a negative feature, you'd expect more material to be in the ditch. So there's all these problems associated with interpreting these kind of things. How do we quantify materials? For animal remains, this is very fragmented, so I use a weight, because the weight is more indicative of material, because one fragment doesn't equal one bone. Whereas one fragment of bone can be this big or this big, depending on what type of bone it is. Whereas if you're looking at flint, one flint tool is one flint tool, one flake is one flake. So numbers make more sense there. What else was it? And also collection method. What size of square do we use? Do we use half metre, as in this case, 1 metre, 2 metre, 20 centimetres? What's the resolution of our data? And how does that relate to what we're trying to find out? And in essence, we come back to this idea that was said before, that this is a palimpsest site. It's a build-up of material, a build-up of activities over time. Something we can do, though, to make a clearer picture is apply some spatial analysis. I decided to choose more visually appealing analyses and shy away from more statistical things, which I did do. But this is maybe a nice way of displaying what's going on. We have densities of bird remains and density of mammal remains, where these two, I put them together in one image, and where these two materials are together in the same high densities, you get a yellow colour. So we're getting a nice area around here of yellow, where we're getting both of these materials together, and we're looking like we've got some kind of activity area going on. Strangely, inside this structure, it's more red. And this looks like an erosion effect of when the structure was built, people have been moving around more in this area, and they could be fragmenting from mammal bone even more and eroding that, whereas bird remains are far stronger, especially when they get into the soil context. So they preserve much better in these environments. Note that we've got this nice activity area here, and it's outside of the structure. So we're getting activity go on outside of the house in regards to these kind of materials. And this is using use where it was lots, and looking at the cut marks and butchery, it was seal bones, the seal skins, cow bones also were being butchered, and materials like that. Lots of duck bone as well. Mainly, the birds were mainly ducks. We can use this technique. Yeah, so if you can compare this to what we had before, now we're getting a better resolution and a better understanding of the space. We can do this for other artifact types. So this is looking at flint. And talking to the lithics expert, she was saying that the flint was used in a very much like an ad hoc way. So you use a piece of flint, you discard it, you need another piece of flint, you just pick it up off the ground, you nap it to sharpen it, you use it, you discard it. And yet you end up with a very psychedelic picture, which is generally depicting this random use of flint. So it's a very random picture. It's very variable, which is in line with what the lithics specialist was saying. Nicely, around the half here, we have this white colour. Now that's where we're getting the waste, the flake, and the splinters of flint occurring at the same place. And this is indicative of flint napping. So we're getting the combination of these three categories, and we can see that it looks like people are flint napping around the half inside a house. And that's the kind of activity that we'd expect to find inside such a structure. Okay? And we can put these, we can move up a level to larger classes, so just the animal remains, stone and flint, and have a broader overview. So now we have this outside activity area more red, but we also have some yellow from the stone. And we have this feature here, which I haven't talked about. This is a feature which contains 1,000+ pieces of charred grain. Again, the lithics analyst looked at use of this stone and concluded they were used for grinding grain. So we have quernstones and we have an area of burnt grain, so this looks more like a cereal processing area. So we're starting to identify in more detail various activities. And again, inside the house now, we're having the flint and the stone being broadly contained. And in this area, there's also 300 pieces of amber. And the whole, as we say, chain operatoire from the raw material through to the amber beads, even broken amber beads, still remaining in the house, not taken away. Let's speed up a bit. So, what I also tried to do was take all these activities, because I've just shown you a quick overview, and try to put them together in some kind of image. And it got very complex, because there's so many activities going on. I'm sure there's more than this there, but I tried to piece together where things were coming from and how they were interacting on the settlement and what activities they were taking place in. So this is, essentially, I think most of you would have heard about taskscapes. This is kind of trying to visualise, if you like, a taskscape. So if you take the crops in the top right, these are cereals. They're in combination with stones, they're ground down, so the stones come from the coast. And this flour ends up in the beakers with a mixture of boiled plants and various fish as well. And this turns into mixed resource meals, which are cooked up around the hearth in the house. And all this information is coming from various specialists. And there's a whole host of other things going on, which we haven't got time to go into. And the specialists involved were mainly these people. There were a few more added to the team. And as you can see, we've got Virginia Garcia, who's from Leiden, who's just completed her PhD. Sandra Beckerman, other PhD student also, she completed last year. We have ceramics, archaeology, botany, spatial analysis, there's residues in there somewhere as well. There's a whole mix of specialisms coming together to try to explain this site. And we worked very much in a multidisciplinary framework. So we came together with meetings, regular meetings, to integrate our data, start a discussion, so we'd all come from our own perspective, discuss what we found out, and try to include this together and debate what it meant as a complete site. So we're not just coming from, well, initially we come from our own perspective, but then we try to broaden out and make these connections between all the specialisms. And that really helped us contextualise each other's research within the grand narrative. Moreover, it allowed us to rethink and rework what we do to allow for extra analysis. So, for instance, the zooarchaeologists noticed some marks on the bones. He gave it to the U-square analysis. She looked at it and could determine more about the bone, and then it came to me to figure out where did this come from and piece the archaeological record, if you like, back together. And of course there were disagreements, which was all part of the thing. And this is kind of how it all came together. So we had some nice linking up between the various disciplines. Some didn't, some did. And it turned out to be that the spatial analysis was what really fused it all together. It was kind of the glue which brought the site back together, which makes sense because most things have a spatial context. So to be able to understand lithics with zooarchaeology material, the common denominator is a space in which they're positioned. And again, this helped us make a integrated interpretation and led to a synthesis. Okay. However, this is what we were able to do, but there's a number of problems. And this mainly comes down to palimpsests and sampling, which I'll explain a bit more. I'll start with palimpsests, because that's fairly easy. Okay, here's a quote from Bailey, and which describes what a palimpsest is. It's about a superimposition of successive activities and material traces which are partially destroyed or reworked, so they're coming together in the same place. But there are various types of palimpsests. We have a true palimpsest, which is a nightmare because it destroys anything that's there. So whatever went before is completely eradicated. Cumulative palimpsests, which are useful because this is a build-up of material over time. And this, in many ways, is indicative of repetitive actions, repetitive activities taking place in the same location. We have spatial palimpsests, which are a bit stranger, though we kind of don't really take into account much, but that's where you have, say, settlements distributed over the landscape, but not connected. And then you'll also have temple palimpsests and something called a palimpsest of meaning, where, say, an artifact can have multiple meanings over the life history of its existence, which I won't go into that one too much. So, then are palimpsests a problem or an opportunity? I'd say if they're the result of a cumulative result of human activity, then this is what we want to look at. And we really want to look in more depth and more detail into these types of palimpsests to try to pick apart what's going on. And especially this would be something which we could do with in-depth spatial analysis, but really going beyond just simple push-button methods that are currently available in current GIS packages. So we really have to treat it more as a specialist, a specialism in itself. So while, say, I'll pick on the lithic specialists, they can do spatial distributions as well. So can all the other specialists, but it's not until you get all these data sets together and analysed in a much more in-depth way that we start to really get to the power of spatial analysis. Okay. Now, it comes to a problem when we start sampling palimpsests. And there's this nice quote from the 1970s. Of course, it depends what type of sampling you're doing and why you're sampling. But palimpsests, I'm not a fan of taking one sample from a palimpsest. I'd like to do, from a spatial perspective, I would like to have a continuous area. So, for Minaka, it was excavated 100%, so completely excavated. However, for botanical samples were only taken in botanically rich contexts. So only where they saw them around this feature up here were botany samples taken. So if I had a question, like I'd like to see if there's areas of grain threshing, I would like to have a broader area and see if there's any of the ratchet nodes or any other elements of the grain surviving in places where maybe you wouldn't see them with the naked eye. So because it was a dark feature, of course they sampled it because it stayed humid. But what if there's more subtle indicators that we can't see with our eyes? It's only when we sample and process material can we see them. And then I can't even discuss about storage because, again, I do not have a botanical data set to be able to interrogate, to have a look at. There's another type of sampling, which is representative sampling, which in this case, of course, we only had limited time, so there's only so much of the fish remains we could have actually looked at. In this case, so many boxes were taken from the archive and taken as a representative sample. I had no idea how this related to what was left, so how much of the data did we actually have versus how much data was left in the archive, what was in the archive, and how that related. So I couldn't use that data set. I just had to ignore it because I could have plotted it, but it would mean nothing because of the uncertainty regarding what isn't there. So representative sampling, while it can say a lot about a site in kind of a snapshot, it does not take account generally for spatial distribution. So it makes it a hard type of data set to work with. What was next? And when we approach settlements, I'm sure we're all aware, it really depends what methods we use, really depends on how we want to really understand how people lived. One way is to determine how space was used through spatial analysis. So we've had quite a few examples of spatial data, and maybe we want to analyse things a bit further. And in general, sampling is largely incompatible with this type of intra-site spatial analysis, where we need a continuous area of data. There are cases where you could take samples at regular intervals, which would be suitable proxies for the remaining data. So that's something we could look at. But a random sampling strategy or a strategy of, say, 1 square in 4 gives big problems because then that's, say, 25% of the data versus 75% is missing. And again, we can model that uncertainty, but it's when we're looking, say, if we're using meter squares and we're trying to find discrete areas of activity, it can cause big problems. Something else which seems to be something which is maybe targeted more than anything else are house plans. And these really only tell part of the story. There seems to be, in general, a big fascination with a house plan. And finding the house plan is an end in itself sometimes. But as we've seen here with phosphate analysis, we want to find out what's happening inside the house. How does the house work as a spatial unit, as a spatial structure? What's going on? But more than that, what's also happening outside the house? Because we're concentrating very much on the house itself, but it's part of the settlement. So how does the settlement function? What about bounded space, unbounded space? How do we bring these two things together? So then, I kind of want to wrap up with, well, I've said about problem of palimpsests, and I've said some problems of sampling. But maybe it's better to say the opportunity of palimpsests and the challenge of sampling. So, and I think I'm going to kind of leave it on that, with just a note that maybe a bit of self-advertising. My PhD's out, it's for free. The download from there, so that will make it happen. You can buy it, there are various places where to sell. Also, my colleague Sandra Beckerman also has a PhD out last year, which is on Sidestone Press, and Virginia Garcia, the lithics specialist, has recently finished her PhD and it'll be out shortly. So, on that note, thank you.